The show begins on a luxurious boat at sea with our protagonist Mion dressed in a wedding gown. She's very excited about her wedding, but soon receives word that her fiancé, Young Kai, still has not arrived. She then tries to call him but discovers that his phone is turned off. Shortly after, a young woman named Song approaches her and reveals that Young Kai won't be showing up. She appears to have a crush on him and doesn't want the wedding to happen. Song also reveals that Young Kai's family is unaware of the marriage and they would never consent to him marrying someone as poor as Mion. She claims that the people attending the wedding are not his relatives, but paid actors hired by Young Kai. The scene then shifts to a day before where Mion and Young Kai are together discussing their wedding preparations. We learn from their conversation that they have a child together who's only a few months old. Young Kai then leaves the house claiming he has some errands to run. After some time, Mion receives a call from his phone, but a woman speaks on the other side. She claims to have found the phone on the ground and invites Mion to retrieve it. A while later, Mion reaches the given address and finds herself in front of a huge mansion. There, she meets Song, who leads her inside the house and claims her cleaning lady will give her the phone. Mion is perplexed, but then also notices Young Kai in the mansion. She explains that she came to get his phone, but didn't realize he was already there. It turns out to be Young Kai's home, but Mion has no idea he comes from a wealthy family. He then sends her home to rest because their wedding is tomorrow. In the present, Mion recalls this and is devastated to discover that her fiancé betrayed her on their wedding day. She starts crying and makes the tragic decision to end her life by jumping into the ocean. The next day, Young Kai goes against his family's wishes and decides to marry Mion, but it's too late. He dispatches a search team to look for her, but is informed that they were unable to find her body. The scene then shifts to 6 years later, where we see Young Kai still single and grieving for Mion. He's not interested in any romantic relationship and is entirely focused on his work. One evening, he attends a charity event featuring an auction of limited designer clothing. Song is also at the event and attempts to flirt with him by asking him out on a date. However, he rejects her advances and states that he needs to take care of his son. Shortly after, Young Kai notices a stunning woman entering the party who looks exactly like his beloved Mion. This leaves him shaken to the core because he thought she died long ago. However, he soon discovers that the woman is a well-known designer named Helson, who never appears in public. Young Kai then speaks with her, and after a brief conversation, he realizes that she's a very different personality than the old Mion. Afterward, a perplexed Young Kai sends his son, Tong Wan, to approach the woman. The little boy eagerly approaches her and even refers to her as mother. We then find out that she is the real Mion, who recognizes her son but pretends not to know him. She treats him calmly and tells him that while he's very nice, he should not refer to her as mother. The boy then spills some beads on the ground, which Mion helps him pick up. Seeing this, Young Kai recalls that Mion used to be a toy designer, but due to an accident, she was unable to use her hand properly and gave up on her career. To his disappointment, this woman appears to be moving her hands perfectly. In the following scene, he's in the bathroom with his cousin Jiang, both taken aback by the recent development. Young Kai believes that it's his ex-fiancée, but Jiang claims it's impossible. He tells Young Kai that he spent months looking for her at sea and was unable to find her. He's concerned about his cousin and advises him to forget about the woman and move on with his life. However, Young Kai refuses and asks Jiang to investigate the designer Helson. He also asks him to keep an eye on his assistant Tong, as she and Mion were very close. He believes that if this woman really is Mion, she will surely contact Tong. Meanwhile, Mion texts someone and explains that she needs to use her Helson identity for a while, to which the other person agrees. After the party, Young Kai leads her outside, where they come across a servant watering the plants. While asking for directions, Young Kai becomes soaked in water, so Mion offers him her coat to keep from getting sick. The two then say their goodbyes and leave for home. Later, we see Mion in a car with the man who pulled her from the sea. She states that she wants to work for Young Kai's company, but the man is worried that she might fall in love with him again. However, Mion clarifies that she doesn't care about him anymore and has no intention of getting back with him. She explains that she just needs to verify some things, and the man agrees with her decision. The next day, Song pays a visit to Young Kai's house under the pretense of meeting his son. However, he informs her that Tong Wan is currently at school. Song eventually agrees to leave, but insists on using the bathroom first. She then enters Young Kai's room without his permission and is surprised at how large and luxurious it is. She then smiles to herself and tells her that one day all this will be hers. While going through his belongings, Song notices a small box beside his bed and wonders what it is. She discovers 2 strands of hair inside and tries to throw them away. But just then, Young Kai shows up and prevents her from doing so. He then yells at her, telling her not to touch his belongings like that. After Song leaves, Young Kai looks at the box and it turns out that the hair belongs to Mion. He remembers the good times he had with her and starts missing her a lot. In the afternoon, Young Kai and Mion meet at a cafe. He orders her favorite drink, a latte, but she doesn't fall into his trap and claims she doesn't like coffee. He then returns her coat and asks her how he can express his gratitude. To his surprise, Mion asks if she can work at his company. Young Kai readily agrees because he's interested in her and knows she's a very talented designer. The next day, Young Kai brings Tong Wang to see Mi-an once again. The boy calls her mother once again and hands her a birthday invitation. She accepts the invitation and wishes him a very happy birthday in advance. Later, when Young Kai asks if she likes children, Mi-an lies and says she doesn't. She explains that she just didn't want to hurt Tong Wan's feelings. Afterward, Young Kai takes her to the company and makes her head of the marketing department. This pisses off a lot of other employees because they've been waiting for that promotion for a long time. At night, Young Kai watches her work late and recalls Mi-an's fear of the dark. So while they're heading out, he tries to test her and causes a power outage. He starts talking about ghosts, but she's not afraid and tells him not to believe in such things. The following day, Jiang and his assistant Tong are driving somewhere when she suddenly receives a text from Mi-an inviting her to meet. Tong gets so excited that she abandons her boss on the road and rushes to see her best friend. Upon the reunion, a tearful Tong questions Mi-an about why she has not contacted her in such a long time. The latter explains that she spent the last 6 years studying fashion design in France. She also tells her about Mike, the man who saved her from drowning and took care of her. When asked about her sudden return, Mi-an talks about her late father, who was a toy designer. She tells her that her father's life was ruined when a student falsely accused him of stealing their designs. After being fired, he decided to concentrate on his toy factory, which was also mysteriously burned down. He then became deeply depressed and took his own life. According to Mike, Young Kai's family was involved in the incident. Our heroine has now returned to confirm this and take revenge, hoping to destroy Young Kai as he destroyed her life. She also requests that Tong investigate her boss Jiang, who is a member of Young Kai's family. Hearing all this, Tong is shocked, but she agrees to help her best friend in any way she can. Mi-an arrives at Young Kai's house the following day to celebrate her son's birthday. She finds him in the kitchen cooking and engages him in a conversation. Out of the blue, Young Kai asks if she likes eggs with tomatoes. He knows this used to be Mi-an's favorite, so he just wants to test her. But she also knows how to play clever and claims that she dislikes the dish. Their conversation is interrupted when little Tong Wan rushes up to greet Mi-an and leads her to his room to play. Soon after, Song shows up at the party with a cake. She attempts to approach the birthday boy, but he ignores her and prefers to be with Mi-an. This makes Song envious, so she continues to steal toys from Mi-an until one of them accidentally breaks. The little boy is devastated and claims that his mother made this toy a long time ago. Song attempts to apologize, but Mi-an asks her to leave the room. She then consoles Tong Wan and tries to distract him by playing hide-and-seek. When the birthday party's over, Mi-an begins to snoop around the house. She tries to find some evidence related to her father, but realizes there's too many cameras around. Meanwhile, Young Kai sees her in the CCTV footage and wonders what she's up to. Days later, several company members, including our protagonist, travel to another city for business. Mi-an then leads Young Kai out of the hotel so her assistant can search his room. While walking together, they notice some bullies harassing female employees from their company. This enrages Mi-an, and she starts yelling at the men. She even splashes them with water and tells them to behave. Seeing this, Young Kai is both surprised and impressed because the old Mi-an used to be very naive and timid. After that, the two ride a Ferris wheel, and when Young Kai notices Mi-an shivering, he offers her his jacket. Shortly after, the wheel suddenly malfunctions, trapping them. When they see nobody else around, they start to worry. Young Kai, who is slightly drunk, tells Mi-an when he saw her, he could not help but think she was his deceased girlfriend. He eventually realized that it was impossible because their personalities are so different. Young Kai then expresses how much he misses her and mentions how long a time he spent looking for her at sea without success. After saying this, he tries to kiss Mi-an, but she backs away and claims she's not his girlfriend. She mocks him for expressing how much he misses his girlfriend while attempting to kiss another woman. Young Kai is embarrassed and apologizes for his behavior. Just then, Mi-an feels exhausted and suddenly loses consciousness. Young Kai panics and tries to open the door with all his strength. Eventually, he manages to break the lock, but injures his hand in the process. He then immediately rushes Mi-an to the hospital. Afterward, Young Kai receives a report and finds out that she has low blood sugar. He also discovers that Helson and Mi-an's blood type is the same, making him overjoyed. The next day, Jiang arrives at the hospital and provides him with some clothes. As they chat, Young Kai shows him the report and explains how Helson's physical traits are similar to Mi-an's. However, Jiang scolds him, claiming that everyone around him is convinced that she is dead, except for him. He suggests that if Young Kai truly wants confirmation, he should conduct a DNA test. Jiang then gets into his car and calls the clinic to schedule a genetic test, which Tong overhears. Later, when Mi-an is discharged from the hospital, she receives a text from Tong about this information. This alerts her heroine, and she decides to arrange a fake blood sample. The following day, the company hires a new employee named Chang. Mi-an is surprised to see her as they were once friends in college. Chang turns out to be a very talented and successful designer, and Mi-yeon is very proud of her success. However, she tries to hide her true identity and acts as if they're meeting for the first time. This behavior shocks Chang, as she knows it's none other than her old friend. Afterward, Mi-yeon goes to Young-kai's office to submit a document. While there, she gets a paper cut and drips blood on the desk by accident. However, it turns out that she deliberately put the fake blood there, knowing he will use it for the genetic test. In the evening, Young-kai receives the DNA test results, which proves that Helson is the mother of Tong-won. Turns out that instead of using the fake blood, he used a strand of her hair to perform the DNA test. Afterward, he shows up at Mi-yeon's house drunk, and she is shocked to see him. He then hugs her crying, while apologizing for the pain he caused her. Young-kai claims that what happened 6 years ago was a misunderstanding, and requests a second chance. Mi-yeon attempts to push him away, but he refuses and clings to her. Annoyed, Mi-yeon seeks Tong's help, and the two of them take Young-kai outside and toss him to the ground. Tong then leaves for home, while Mi-yeon returns inside. Soon after, it starts raining, which causes Mi-yeon to become concerned, so she rushes back outside to check on Young-kai. She notices that he's completely soaked and decides to bring him back inside. She helps him dry off with a towel and asks him to leave, but Young-kai refuses. He then falls onto her, and they both collapse on the bed. At that moment, Mi-yeon's assistant also shows up and misunderstands the situation. With no other option, she hires some musclemen to take him and drop him off at Jeong's address. When Young-kai wakes up the next morning, he's surprised to see his cousin sitting beside him. Jeong then offers him a hangover drink and inquires about what happened last night. Young-kai claims that he drank too much and can't remember anything. But the two soon discover that Young-kai had caused some problems for the company by sending love comments and gifts during Mi-yeon's live broadcast. People believe that it's inappropriate for a manager to publicly express his romantic interest in his employees. Later at work, Mi-yeon discovers that the situation is chaotic and that the employees are concerned about the current gossip. They're making an effort to silence the negative comments, but to no avail. To address this, Mi-yeon convenes a meeting and orders the employees to publish the news. She claims that they were actually promoting their new brand in a unique manner. Furthermore, all gifts collected at the live event will be donated to charities. The employees are convinced by the idea, and they publish the news without delay. Fortunately, this manages to calm the situation and restore the company's reputation. In the evening, Mi-yeon is visited by Mike, the man who rescued her from drowning. They begin to reminisce about their days in France, and Mike comments how she's changed a lot since coming here. He asks her how her revenge plan is going, but Mi-yeon doesn't respond. This makes him worried, and he tells her not to get distracted and to focus on her plan. The following day, Young-kai is in his office talking with Jeong about how the DNA test confirmed Mi-yeon's identity. At this moment, the new employee, Chang, arrives and overhears their conversation. She then quickly leaves and meets with Mi-yeon on the way, who wonders why she's so nervous. Chang makes an excuse, claiming she just saw a cockroach. The two then discuss how they've not eaten yet and decide to go for lunch together. After a while, they arrive at the supermarket where Chang shows Mi-yeon some toys. She then claims that they were made by her former best friend, who is incredibly talented. She goes on to explain how this friend once helped her when she was poor and about to drop out of college. The two even planned to work together and have a successful life, but her friend chose to be selfish and abandoned her. Mi-yeon realizes Chang is referring to her and simply says that her friend must have had a reason. Days later, Mi-yeon is in her office when her assistant arrives and claims that something bad has happened. The company holds an emergency meeting, and it turns out that they have been working very hard on a charity event recently. Unfortunately, their rival company has suddenly published a project idea which is exactly the same as theirs. It could be a coincidence, or someone may have tipped off the rival company. The employees are enraged and want to find out who leaked the idea. Young-kai looks at Mi-yeon, suspecting she did this as part of her revenge on him. So he informs his employees that he will not conduct an investigation and asks them to devise a new plan instead. Afterward, Mi-yeon is sitting in a cafe when the manager from the rival company approaches her. The woman invites her to join them and offers her a much higher salary and benefits than her current job. However, Mi-yeon declines her offer and asks that she leave her alone. Meanwhile, Young-kai is nearby, overhearing the conversation. After the woman leaves, he tries to approach Mi-yeon, but suddenly Mike shows up. He also urges Mi-yeon to consider the other company's offer for her career growth. He explains that Young-kai's company is in a vulnerable state, and this is a perfect time to get revenge on him. Mi-yeon continues to reject his suggestion, and when Mike notices Young-kai nearby, he quickly departs. Afterward, our hero approaches Mi-yeon and comments that she and that guy seem very close, but she responds that it's none of his business. He then says that if she wants to leave the job, he respects her decision. This makes Mi-yeon angry, and she asks if he doesn't find her valuable for the company. Young-kai claims that he didn't mean it that way, but she angrily storms off. Days later, Mi-yeon organizes an important charity event for special needs children. During the event, her assistant informs her that she discreetly checked Young-kai's phone, but couldn't find anything suspicious. She also mentions that his phone was full of Mion's pictures and their old chats. The assistant reveals that the land where Mion's father's toy factory was located belonged to Young Kai's family. However, it turns out that Young Kai had nothing to do with the incident and isn't even on good terms with his family. In the evening, while Mion is playing with the children, Young Kai shows up and looks at her affectionately. He then joins her, and they end up having a great time. Afterward, the two walk alone, and Mion expresses her gratitude to his company for allowing her to organize this event. He replies by saying that she deserves all the credit because she came up with the idea and did all the hard work. Shortly after, they arrive at a restaurant where Young Kai informs Mion that he has a meeting with a client. He asks her if she wants to join, but she refuses and proceeds to sit alone. Not long after, she notices Song in the distance and decides to mess with her. She takes a glass of whiskey and approaches Song, pretending to be drunk. She claims that today's events didn't go well, and now she's embarrassed. Mion also admits that she's thankful to the person who stole her plan and gave it to another company because she wouldn't have been able to implement it. Hearing this, Song is very happy and claims that it was she who did it with the help of Chang. Hearing this, Mion finally drops her act and shows the recorded conversation to Song. This enrages the latter and she tries to attack her, but Young Kai stops her in the nick of time. He then tells her not to bother this woman again. Taken aback by his words, Song tells him to think about their connection. She claims that they've been close since childhood and are meant to be together. However, Young Kai boldly states that he's never been interested in her. After this, Song breaks down in tears and storms off. Mion then plays the recording for him, which reveals that Song was the one who stole their plan and gave it to the rival company. Young Kai is shocked as he didn't know she could go to such lengths. The following day at the company, Chang is leaving for home, but suddenly she is blocked by Mion. Our heroine then asks her if she was involved with leaking the project plan. At first, Chang denies it, but Mion continues to pressure her until she finally admits the truth. Mion then asks why she did this, and Chang begins to accuse her of abandoning her years ago. The two had planned to design toys together and start their company, but Mion got selfish and left her all alone. Just then, Young Kai overhears their conversation and arrives to defend Mion. But Chang gets even more mad and accuses her of leaving her dreams and career to get married to this man. After she leaves, Mion breaks down in tears while Young Kai consoles her. She sobbingly claims that she didn't mean to abandon her friend. Turns out that she had an accident that hurt her hand and she could no longer design. But she didn't want to upset Chang, so she used marriage as an excuse and gave up her career. After Mion finally calms down, she and Young Kai take a walk together. She realizes that her cover is blown and finally admits her true identity. Of course, he already knows this because of the DNA test. He then asks her how her hand healed, and she reveals that she tried out some traditional remedies. The two then head to a restaurant where they used to visit during their college days. In the past, the situation was different, and they were crazy for each other. The restaurant owner is surprised to see them after so long and assumes they must be married by now. Young Kai then orders the same food they used to eat, but Mion asks the owner not to make it spicy. She knows that Young Kai doesn't like spicy food, even though he claims to. She reminds him that he ate spicy food with her all those years just to avoid upsetting her. All of a sudden, she gets mad and accuses him of lying about everything, including his family. Young Kai apologizes to her and claims that she was the first person who genuinely cared about him. She disliked rich people and often considered them spoiled and bratty. That's why he didn't reveal his truth, because he was scared of losing her. After this, Young Kai tells her the truth about their wedding day. He explains that his parents wanted him to marry a rich girl, so he didn't inform them about the wedding. Unfortunately, they found out from Song and summoned him to the house claiming his mom was sick. When he arrived, they tried to convince him not to get married to Mion, which he clearly refused. As a last resort, they gave him sleeping pills and locked him in a room. The following day, Young Kai finally managed to escape, but discovered that Mion had jumped into the water. He reveals that he searched for her for a long time, but couldn't find her. Hearing this, Mion is left speechless and overwhelmed with emotion. Young Kai then apologizes for what happened and asks for a second chance. He admits that he was young and stupid back then, but now he can protect her and give her the love she deserves. Mion responds that she loved and trusted him, but he simply abandoned her during difficult times. She claims that she will never forgive him and storms out of the restaurant in anger. Later at home, Mion continues to think about his words and wonders if she was too harsh on him. The following morning, as she's heading to work, she's confronted by a few thugs who try to harass her. They take out their weapons and begin to threaten her, but our girl isn't even slightly intimidated. She notices Song hiding behind the bushes and tells her to come out. Mion then claims that she can see Young Kai. Hearing this, Song and the thugs immediately flee. Moments later, Young Kai shows up and hugs her tightly. He worries about her and says he can't bear her absence again. In the meantime, Mike sees them hugging from a distance and feels very jealous. Afterward, he approaches Mi-yeon privately and asks her if she's fallen in love again. She denies this, and he reminds her of the revenge plan for her late father. Mi-yeon claims that she investigated and found out that Young-kai had nothing to do with that incident. Mike gets angry and begins to yell at her that Young-kai has completely brainwashed her, but he soon apologizes and claims that he just wants her to be happy. Days later, Mi-yeon is invited to participate in a design competition. Upon her arrival there, she meets Song, who is also a contestant. She wastes no time hurling insults at Mi-yeon and boasting about her chances of winning. While the two are arguing, they encounter Song's grandfather, Mr. Bing-ju, who is also the event organizer. Turns out he's a renowned designer and a legend in the industry. Mr. Bing-ju is delighted to see Mi-yeon and compliments her work. She claims that he is her idol and has admired his work for a long time. Song then tries to speak with her grandpa, but he simply ignores her and walks away. Seeing this, Mi-yeon feels bad for Song and asks about her situation. The latter explains that no matter how hard she works, it's never enough for her grandfather. He always considers her a failure and never recognizes her efforts. She then starts to cry, recalling how he used to love her when she was a child, but now he barely acknowledges her presence. Song claims that she isn't fit to be an heiress and hugs her in tears. Hearing this, Mi-yeon realizes that Song is not a bad person, but just a girl looking for recognition. Soon after, the contest begins, and Mi-yeon intentionally presents average designs instead of her best work. As a result, Song ends up winning the contest, which makes her very happy. After the event, she stands beside her grandfather and sees the guests off. Mr. Bing-ju is also pleased that his granddaughter finally did something to make him proud. Moments later, Song notices Mi-yeon in the distance and decides to thank her. However, she then notices Young-kai approaching her with flowers in his hand. He invites Mi-yeon for dinner, but she rejects him and asks him to leave. Seeing this interaction, Song recalls a past incident when she asked Young-kai for flowers on her birthday, but he coldly dismissed her. At that moment, Song consoled herself by believing that Young-kai is mean to everyone and doesn't know how to be romantic. Now, seeing him bring flowers to another woman, she is heartbroken and begins to cry. The next day, she arrives to thank Mi-yeon and presents her with a gift. She then discusses her decision to leave for France to pursue advanced fashion design. Song says she admires Mi-yeon's work and hopes to be as talented as her in the future. At last, she admits that she's loved Young-kai for a long time, but has finally accepted that their relationship is impossible. Hearing this, Mi-yeon is touched and wishes her good luck. Song then proceeds to reveal that 6 years ago, Cheng contacted her about their wedding. She then informed Young-kai's family, which led to him being locked up and unable to attend. She now apologizes to Mi-yeon, asserting that Young-kai never loved anyone except her. Following this, the girls say their goodbyes and part ways. In the next scene, Mi-yeon attends an award ceremony wearing a dress of her own design. Everyone praises her and comments on how talented she is. But suddenly, a journalist steps up claiming that she is not the famous designer Helson. He then shows a picture of the real Helson and accuses her of stealing someone else's identity. Everyone there is shocked and begins questioning her true identity. Even Mi-yeon is left speechless and doesn't know how to respond. Meanwhile, we see Mike standing in the distance, enjoying the drama. At this moment, Young-kai suddenly shows up and stands beside his beloved woman. He has also brought the real Helson, who turns out to be none other than Mi-yeon's assistant. Helson then informs the journalist that she has social anxiety and doesn't like to appear in public. This is the reason she asked Mi-yeon to attend parties under her name. She further reveals that Mi-yeon is the talented designer who created some of the most wonderful works. Helson asserts that Mi-yeon hasn't betrayed anyone, and her employer, Young-kai, was also aware of everything from the start. Hearing this, the journalists switch their attention to Young-kai, asking if it's true. He confirms it and takes this opportunity to hold Mi-yeon's hand. Young-kai asserts that she's a hard worker and talented designer who has contributed significantly to the company's success, so he doesn't want anyone to bully her or question her integrity. This surprises everyone, while Mike looks at them in anger, realizing that his plan has failed. After the event, Young-kai and Mi-yeon go for a walk by the sea. During this time, she asks if he really loves her, and he confirms it. She then questions him about her father's toy factory incident and asks if he had anything to do with it. Young-kai swears that he wasn't involved with the incident and asks her to trust him. He explains that the land of the toy factory belonged to his family, but he hasn't spoken to his parents in years. This time, Mi-yeon believes him, and she suddenly begins to kiss him. The two then return home together, where they end up making love. The following morning, when Young-kai wakes up and sees Mi-yeon next to him, he begins to cry tears of joy. After all, he's been waiting for her for a long time, and now they're finally together. He then gets up before her and starts making breakfast for the family. When Mi-yeon wakes up, Tong-won rushes to her, calling her mother. He then excitedly asks if she's going to live here, and Mi-yeon says yes. She hugs him tightly and apologizes for not being there for him all these years. However, the little boy is not upset and claims she must have had her reasons. He asks her to promise not to leave him again, and she agrees. In the afternoon, Myeon meets with Mike and confronts him about his failed plan to embarrass her last night. He explains that he did it because he believed he was acting in her best interest as a friend. In response, Myeon says that she's confused about whether he is her friend or enemy anymore. She's grateful for his help over the years, but she's unsure of what he expects from her now. Mike then asks if she's reconciled with Young-kai, but she doesn't respond and leaves. Later, when she heads outside, she spots Mike talking with a masked man. In a flashback, we learn the actual reason why Mike hates Young-kai so much. Turns out they're actually half-brothers. Mike is the son of their father's first wife, and his parents are divorced. His mother pushed him hard to excel in everything, hoping that his father would see him as the better heir than Young-kai. But despite Mike's hard work, his father never acknowledged him or gave him an inheritance. As a result, his mother constantly abused him and blamed him for her own misery. He wanted to compete with Young-kai, who didn't care about inheritance or their father's approval. Turns out, when Mike met Myeon, he felt genuine care for the first time in his life. In the present, Tong is assigned to shred a batch of internal documents. During the process, she comes across a crucial document revealing that Jeong was responsible for the demolition agreement of Myeon's father's factory. Meanwhile, Myeon and Young-kai are expecting a construction site when she receives a text message from Tong informing her about this. This enrages her, and she accuses him of lying to her. Young-kai denies knowing anything about it and doesn't believe that Jeong could do such a thing. While they're arguing, one of Mike's men discreetly shows up and tampers with the scaffolding. It soon collapses under Myeon, but Young-kai heroically saves her. Unfortunately, he sustains injuries in the process and is rushed to the hospital. In the next scene, Jeong arrives at the hospital and begins to argue with Myeon. He tells her that if she doesn't appreciate Young-kai, she should stay away from him. His cousin has suffered for 6 years because of her and asks her not to torture him in the name of love. Myeon attempts to explain herself, but Jeong angrily accuses her of siding with Mike to plot against Young-kai for his inheritance. This leaves our heroine shocked, as she didn't know Young-kai and Mike were related. Later, we find out that Jeong was angry because Tong confronted him about the documents regarding the toy factory. He asserted that he had nothing to do with the fire incident. Since the factory was on their family property, they agreed to the demolition but never took any forceful measures. In the meantime, Myeon stays by Young-kai's side all night, caring for him. When he wakes up in the morning, she bursts into tears and apologizes for causing his injuries. After some time, Young-kai is discharged from the hospital, and the couple heads home. On the way, she asks him about his relationship with Mike. Young-kai reveals that Mike is his half-brother from his father's first marriage. He explains that Mike has always harbored jealousy towards him and has actively tried to sabotage him and his loved ones. Just then, Myeon recalls the masked figure she saw at the construction site and recognizes him as the same person who met with Mike a few days ago. They realize it was all a part of his plan to hurt them. Young-kai also claims that the accident that injured Myeon's hand years ago was not an accident at all. He's convinced that Mike did it on purpose to hurt him. Hearing this, Myeon is devastated because she looked up to Mike as a brother. Later at home, Myeon is deeply upset and reminisces about the time when she was struggling with her hand injury. Mike was the one who helped her get through that difficult time and encouraged her to keep going. With his help, she recovered and pursued her passion for fashion design. When Myeon got her first project, Mike seemed to be truly happy for her. She breaks down in tears as she recalls this, but Young-kai comforts and hugs her. In the meantime, Mike is in his office when he receives the news that Young-kai has recovered and left the hospital. He is irritated by yet another failed plan and decides to plot something drastic to destroy his half-brother once and for all. The following day, Myeon learns that one of their most important clients has terminated their contract with the company. She's shocked because they hadn't even mentioned a valid reason. Myeon then immediately books a ticket on the first plane and travels to another city. She meets with her client and asks for an explanation for the termination. The man appears nervous, claiming that the decision is beyond his control, but Myeon starts pressuring him until he finally admits that Mr. Bing-ju asked him to do it. This leaves our heroine shocked because the last time they met, the old man was admiring and complimenting her. When Myeon returns to the company, she doesn't stay quiet and sends her brother to speak with Mr. Bing-ju. He pretends to be a toy designer and sets up a meeting. He then informs Mr. Bing-ju that he saw one of his designs on the internet. He wants to replicate it, but the old man admits that his company has never made toys and that it must be a misunderstanding. Myeon's brother says that there's no problem and walks out of the room. Following this, Mr. Bing-ju begins to yell at his secretary, who claims that he deleted the old files and has no idea where he got this design. In response, the old man angrily says that he doesn't want the world to know that his company once produced toys. Just then, Myeon's brother returns and claims that he forgot his phone. Turns out, he had recorded their entire conversation, which he later plays to his sister. The following evening, Young Kai takes Mion to a bar to relax and distress. Shortly after, she gets a call and steps outside. When Mion comes back, she notices a woman flirting with Young Kai and gets amused. He tries to avoid the woman, but she refuses to leave and clings to him. Pissed, Mion approaches and directly sits in the middle of them, which annoys the other girl. Young Kai then puts his hand on Mion and comments that his wife doesn't like him to drink. Realizing that they're a couple, the girl gives up and leaves. Afterward, the two laugh about the situation, and Mion teases that Young Kai must have dated a lot of girls during her absence. He responds that whenever he went out, he made sure to have 3 guys around him to avoid unwanted attention from girls. He says that because of this, eventually, rumors started floating around that he was gay. Not long after, they noticed Mr. Bingju entering the bar with a young girl and his associates. Turns out Young Kai deliberately brought Mion here so that they could spy on him. The old man almost sees them, but the couple covers their faces and manages to hide from him. Afterward, Mion pretends to be a waitress and plans to eavesdrop on Mr. Bingju and his clients. She even puts on a mask and goes to serve them food and drinks. During this time, she overhears conversations about Mr. Bingju's unfair business practices and how he can go to any length for his benefit. She also notices the old man openly flirting with and touching a young girl. Because she's been sitting there for a long time, the others start to notice her and ask who she is. Mion is stunned and terrified that she will be discovered. However, at that moment, a staff member arrives and orders her to serve guests in other rooms. Mion hurriedly leaves, and it turns out that the staff member was sent by Young Kai. The following day, our protagonists go to a restaurant where Mr. Bingju is having a meeting with someone. They sit in a corner hiding their faces when, surprisingly, Mike shows up to meet the old man. From their conversation, the couple finds out that they're plotting together to destroy Young Kai. Mr. Bingju is upset with Mike because he promised to get rid of Young Kai and take over his inheritance and company. It appears that none of his previous plans have succeeded. However, Mike pleads for Mr. Bingju's trust and claims he will handle it his own way. Afterward, Mion contacts the media and exposes all of Mr. Bingju's misdeeds. She even shares videos of the old man hanging out with inappropriately young women. The news spreads like wildfire, so Mr. Bingju's reputation takes a big hit. He also passes out due to the stress and ends up in the hospital. In the evening, Mr. Bingju calls Mike and begins to scold him for his incompetence. He then orders him to take action against Mion. Despite their differences, Mike seems to care about Mion and doesn't want to hurt her. So he convinces the old man that she has nothing to do with this and shifts the blame to Young Kai. He requests Mr. Bingju not hurt Mion and promises to deal with his half-brother. Meanwhile, our protagonists return home after a long day and try to rest. Just then, Mion receives a call from Mike, who is extremely drunk and frustrated. He asks her to meet so they can make amends. Our heroine responds that she's busy and can't see him. However, Mike continues to persist, so Young Kai talks with him and tells him not to bother them anymore. The following day, Mion and Young Kai discover that more people have come forward and spoken out about Mr. Bingju's exploits against them. Turns out, the old man has taken advantage of his position and stolen the designs of many talented designers. Furthermore, he's also exploited numerous female employees and harassed them. Later in the afternoon, Mion meets with Song, who has returned from France. They have a nice chat, and Song informs her about an upcoming fashion design competition hosted by a major French company called Bife. The opportunity to win this competition could give their business exposure on a global scale. Song mentions that she has contracts with Bife and can help her company win the contest. Mion is pleased at first, but Song states that she has one condition. Turns out that she wants Mion to stop pursuing her grandfather and leave him alone. She argues that he's an old man and his health is deteriorating because of recent news. She asks Mion to stop causing him distress and promises to help her in return. However, our heroine rejects the offer, claiming that she's doing the right thing by exposing such a corrupt man. When Mion returns to work, she's approached by Mike's assistant. The two chat for a while, and the woman offers her a job at their company. She tempts her with a high salary, lots of benefits, and shares in the company. She says that with Mion's help, they could easily win the Bife competition since their company is more established than Yun Kei's. However, Mion continues to turn down the offer, saying she's happy where she is. Afterward, when Mike receives the news, he's enraged and feels defeated that Mion prefers Young Kai more than him. In the coming days, our heroine teams up with other designers and works tirelessly on new designs for the competition. She's completely absorbed in her work, leaving Young Kai bored. He often makes excuses to be near her by bringing her snacks and drinks. However, Mion asks him not to disturb her and kicks him out of the room. Later, when Tong Wan approaches him, he sits alone on the stairs, missing her. Young Kai comes up with a plan and sends his son to bother his mother. However, Mion also kicks him out, leaving the father-son duo sitting on the stairs, annoyed. The following day, Mion finally comes out of her room while the father and son are watching TV. She then announces that she will return to her former home for a while because she needs to concentrate on her work and is finding it difficult to do so here. At that point, her brother arrives to pick her up. Young Kai is sad and keeps holding her hand to stop her from leaving, but Mion apologizes and leaves. In the evening, she's working with her team when Mike suddenly shows up at the house. He's brought her fireworks, and she recalls how they used to set them off while in France. After a brief conversation, she allows him into the house, but Mike starts behaving annoyingly, so Mion becomes angry and scolds him. She claims to have trusted him for years, but he was only trying to destroy her life. Hearing this, Mike becomes angry and states that she never trusted him and that she always had feelings for young Kai. He suddenly gets up and breaks a glass, injuring his hand. Mion worries and rushes to the kitchen to find first aid supplies. During her absence, he cunningly takes pictures of her designs. When she returns and treats his hand, he apologizes for his outburst, claiming he just wants to see her happy. The following day, Song goes to meet her grandpa, who is still in the hospital. She tries to help him, but he begins to insult her, claiming that he doesn't like the way she works. He then calls her a failure and kicks her out of the room. After Song leaves, Mike shows up to meet the old man. He says that Mion is actually a good person and that she's just brainwashed by young Kai. He then offers her designs to the old man, claiming she gave them to him herself. Not long after, news spreads rapidly that Mr. Bingju's company plans to incorporate porcelain as the primary element in the upcoming competition. The company also publishes designs which are clearly stolen from Mion. Mike assumes that she must be in a panic, but it looks like she and young Kai are both quite pleased. Turns out, she never planned to use those designs. She purposely left them on the table for Mike to find and possibly steal. In the following scene, Mion arrives at Tongguan's school to pick him up, but is informed that Song has already done so. Just then, she receives a call from the cunning woman, inviting her to meet. When Mion arrives at the said location, she notices her son is fine and is relieved. Song then tells her that she hopes Mion now understands how difficult it is to watch their family suffer. She expresses concern about her grandfather and asks that he be left alone. However, Mion refuses, saying that he deserves everything that is happening to him. Later at home, she's upset with her son for leaving the school with Song. Tongguan explains that he went with her because he assumed she was his father's friend. He apologizes to his mother and promises that it will not happen again. The little boy also assures his father that he will not have any female friends from now on. Hearing this, Mion begins to laugh and gives her son a sweet kiss. Over the next few days, Mion works very hard for the competition, and young Kai helps by being her personal assistant. But as the competition day approaches, disaster strikes. Mion learns that her main model has abruptly canceled their contract and they're unable to find anyone else now. Turns out this was all plotted by Song to sabotage Mion and her project. However, our heroine doesn't give up, and she asks her brother to take part in a runway. On the day of the competition, everything seems to be going well, and Mion arrives to check up on her brother who's getting ready. She notices him wearing sneakers, and he reveals that they're really comfortable and suitable for the event. In another scene, a man intentionally walks in front of a car, causing an accident. The driver gets out to check on him, but during this time, another person appears and punctures his tires. Shortly after, Mion receives the news that the van carrying boots for the female models has been involved in an accident and won't arrive on time. Despite this setback, she stays positive and asks her brother to order dozens of sneakers like his. The show begins quickly with various contestants showcasing their works in the pouring rain, which appears to be the theme. Soon, Mion's team walks out in the rain, dressed in stunning designs and sneakers. The judges are fascinated by her designs and her unique presentation. Despite Song's efforts to sabotage her, the event is a success, and Mion eventually wins the contest. Days later, she arrives to meet Song in her office, but sees her arguing with her assistant. The assistant soon leaves, and Mion tells Song that although she won the contest, she hasn't heard anything from Bai Fei regarding their contract. She suspects Song is using her connections with them to intentionally disrupt the contract. In response, the cunning bitch says that the competition results were a mistake, and the company doesn't want to work with Mion. Afterward, Song is in the bathroom when her assistant approaches her again, pleading for leave because she's pregnant. She asserts that she can't draw any more and is exhausted. From their conversation, we learn that Song has been presenting her assistant's designs as her own. She's doing this just to please her grandfather, who doesn't even care about her. Song insists that she can't grant leave and exits the bathroom. The assistant breaks down in tears, and just then, Mion walks in. She offers her a tissue and comforts her. The next day, Jiang and Tong are on their way to the company when they come across a man named Jiming. He begs Jiang for investment as his company is on the verge of bankruptcy. Jiang takes his file, but his security guards soon arrive and lead the man away. A while later, young Kai pays his cousin a visit and the two begin talking about work and life. Young Kai notices a file nearby and asks him about it. Jiang responds that a man approached him this morning, begging for investment. Young Kai then opens the file and is surprised to discover that the man has ties to Mion's father. After leaving the office, he calls Jiming and expresses an interest in investing in his business. He also calls Mion and informs her that he has found some information about her father's factory. A while later, Jiming arrives at his office and begins discussing his toy company, which is on the verge of bankruptcy. He claims to have borrowed from everyone to pay off his debts, and his mother even sold her home for him. He also mentions that his father is ill and has no one else to turn to. So, Jiming offers him 30% of the company shares in exchange for his investment. However, Young Kai surprises him by offering to buy his entire company instead. Next, Mion attends a fashion show organized by Song. She talks with Song's assistant and gives feedback on the designs. Seeing this, the bitch gets upset and begins insulting Mion in front of the crowd and journalists. She states how Mion pretended to be Helson for a long time and deceived the public. She also accuses her of seducing a wealthy man like Young Kai and using him to achieve success. Returning to Young Kai, he confronts Jiming about his relationship with Mion's father. Turns out, Jiming was his student, and he accused his own teacher of stealing his work, which led to him being fired. Despite this, Mion's dad didn't take any action against him. Young Kai then questions how he could betray such a virtuous man. Jiming suddenly begins to cry and claims that he regrets it every day. He recalls that his teacher was very kind and even offered him money to help him finish his studies. Jiming suggests that perhaps it's karma and that he's suffering today for betraying his mentor. Yun Kai calms him down and claims that it's still not too late to do the right thing. He urges Jiming to reveal who instructed him to betray his teacher and asks if it's Song or her grandfather. However, Jiming shocks Yun Kai by revealing that it was Mike who had offered him a large sum of money for the job. He also admits that Mike was the one involved in burning down the toy factory. Jiming says that he's had enough guilt and is ready to confess to the police. He decides to hand over the company to Yun Kai and asks him to take care of it. Meanwhile, at the event, Song continues to insult Mion in front of the media. However, our heroine turns the tables by revealing that all of Song's designs were created by her assistant. She provides proof that the assistant uploaded these designs to her old social media profile years ago when she was still a student. She claims Song is a bully who takes advantage of vulnerable people for personal gain. Hearing this, everyone is shocked and asks the assistant if it's true. The poor woman is just terrified, but with Mion's support, she eventually exposes how her boss has been torturing her for years. Because of the incident, Song and her family's reputation is severely damaged. Later, she visits her grandfather, who has already learned about the whole situation. She tries to apologize to him, but the old man gets mad and throws a cup at her. He asserts that he doesn't want to see her again and tells her to leave. In a moment of rage, Song decides to take revenge on Mion and invites her to meet in a deserted area. Upon receiving the text, Mion doesn't think anything of it and heads to the location. Elsewhere, Mike receives a text from Jiming, who claims that he's going to confess to the police. This makes Mike scared, so he immediately calls his assistant and makes plans to flee the country. On the way to the airport, he calls Mion to say goodbye, but discovers that she's on her way to meet Song. This worries him, as he suspects Song might be trying to harm her out of revenge. So he decides to turn around and heads to meet Mion first to make sure she's safe. When he arrives at the location, he notices Song driving a car that is about to hit Mion. He gets in the car with Song and asks her to stop, but she doesn't listen. So he tries to take control of the vehicle, and the two start fighting. Unfortunately, this causes an accident, leaving them both seriously injured. Moments later, Mion notices them and rushes to get Mike out of the car. He is badly injured and seems unlikely to survive. In his final moments, he apologizes to Mion for hurting her and taking advantage of her for all these years. Mike admits that he initially approached her out of selfishness, but eventually began to care about her. He reveals that she was the first person in his life who treated him like family. Saying this, he passes away in her arms. Not long after, an ambulance arrives and takes away Song, who is badly injured. Mion is devastated and can't stop crying, so Yun Kai holds her in his arms and consoles her. The scene then shifts to many days later, when our protagonists have returned to their normal lives. After many twists and turns, the cooperation with Bai Fei has finally been finalized. Mion has also hired Song's former assistant and gives her the proper recognition she deserves. In the meantime, Yun Kai and Mion decide to complete the wedding ceremony they had been robbed of. Before the ceremony, he decides to take her to meet his parents, something they hadn't done the first time. Later in the car, she asks him what they should do if his parents don't approve of their marriage. Our hero assures her that it doesn't matter because they already have a child and live together. He declares that they will get married regardless of his parents' approval. Shortly after, they arrive at his parents' house, where they are greeted coldly. Mian offers his parents a gift, but they arrogantly refuse to accept it. The four then sit down for lunch, and the atmosphere is very awkward. Yunkai informs his parents about their upcoming wedding, and as expected, they're completely against it. They believe that Mian is a gold digger who is just trying to use him for his money. They then begin to suggest that he should marry someone of their social standing instead. This makes Yunkai furious, and he starts arguing with his parents. He reminds them how they separated him and Mian 6 years ago, but they will not do it again. Amidst the heated argument, Mian begins to laugh, surprising everyone. She then tells Yunkai's parents that she herself is a successful person who doesn't need to seduce rich men for money. Although she may be not as rich as them, she is well off enough to live a good life. Mian also reveals that when she first met Yunkai, he pretended to be poor and she used to share her food card with him. His parents are shocked and they ask Yunkai why he would do that when they used to send him money all the time. But Mian reveals that Yunkai is a proud man and did not want to rely on his parents' money. She also states that he's not interested in inheriting the family business or inheritance. Hearing this, his parents start bickering all over again, claiming Yunkai is in charge of their family business and they can't have an outsider as their heir. They also complain that they want a large, lavish wedding for their son rather than a simple wedding. While they argue, his father takes Mian outside and gives her a diamond necklace as a wedding present. Although they appear tough, Mian realizes they have already accepted her as their daughter-in-law. In the end, the parents reluctantly bless the couple and send them off. Later, we see the couple preparing for their wedding. As they enter the church, they reflect on all of the hardships they have overcome to get to this special moment.